Clara Montgomery was 5 months pregnant when she pretended to drink the tea her husband's mistress had so carefully prepared for her. She watched Veronica's eager smile, saw the anticipation in those cold blue eyes, and knew with absolute certainty that the herbal blend contained something that could kill both her and her unborn child. What Veronica didn't know was that Clara had been recording every conversation, photographing every document, and building a case for 3 months. She was a former investigative journalist who had given up her career for love, but she hadn't forgotten how to uncover the truth. And when that truth included attempted murder, Clara was about to show both her cheating husband Derek and his poisoning mistress exactly what happened when you underestimated the wrong woman. By the time Dr. Jonathan Sterling finished treating her that night, Derek would be in handcuffs, Veronica would be facing attempted murder charges, and Clara would discover that some endings are even better than the revenge you planned. Clara Montgomery had once been one of the most respected investigative journalists in the country, the kind of reporter who could uncover corruption in City Hall or expose corporate fraud with ruthless efficiency. At 32, she had won 2 Pulitzer nominations and built a reputation for tenacious research and unshakable integrity. She could smell a lie from across a room and had an almost supernatural ability to find the truth that people desperately wanted to hide. But love, as it turned out, could make even the smartest woman temporarily blind. Derek Montgomery was a pharmaceutical sales representative with an easy smile and just enough charm to convince Clara that her career-focused life was missing something essential. He courted her with romantic dinners and weekend getaways, promising a partnership built on mutual respect and shared dreams. He said he admired her intelligence, her drive, her independence. He said he wanted to support her career while building a family together. 2 years into their marriage, Clara discovered she was pregnant. Derek seemed thrilled, talking constantly about their future child and how excited he was to be a father. But as Clara's pregnancy progressed, subtle changes began to appear in their relationship. Derek started working later, traveling more, and showing less interest in preparing for the baby. When Clara tried to discuss nursery arrangements or baby names, he seemed distracted, almost annoyed. That's when Clara's journalistic instincts kicked in. It started with small inconsistencies. Derek claimed to be at client dinners on nights when his company's expense reports showed no such meetings. He received text messages at odd hours that he quickly deleted. His cologne smelled different some evenings, and there were unfamiliar receipts in his car for restaurants Clara had never been to. Any other wife might have confronted him directly, demanded explanations, or hired a private investigator. But Clara was a journalist trained to build airtight cases before making accusations. She began to investigate her own husband with the same methodical precision she'd once used to expose crooked politicians. Clara installed tracking software on Derek's phone during one of his long showers. She photographed his credit card statements before he could hide them. She followed him on 3 separate occasions, sitting in her car with a telephoto lens like she was stalking a corrupt senator rather than her own husband. What she discovered was worse than simple infidelity. Derek had been having an affair with Veronica Chase, the head of client relations at his pharmaceutical company, for over 8 months. But this wasn't just about sex or emotional connection. Veronica was helping Derek embezzle money from their joint accounts, redirecting his commission checks to a secret account they shared, and planning to disappear together once Clara gave birth. The plan, as Clara pieced it together from recorded phone calls and intercepted emails, was elegant in its cruelty. Derek would wait until the baby was born, then claim that Clara was suffering from severe postpartum depression. He had already consulted with a lawyer about gaining sole custody, had researched mental health facilities where Clara could be committed, and had been building a paper trail of her supposed instability by canceling her appointments and telling her doctor that she was having emotional outbursts. Once Clara was institutionalized and Derek had custody of the baby, he and Veronica would clean out all their accounts and start fresh in another state. Veronica had already quit her job and applied for positions in Phoenix under an assumed name. Clara documented everything. Every phone call, every email, every financial transaction. She copied files, saved recordings, and built a case that would have impressed any prosecutor. But she made one crucial mistake. She underestimated how far Veronica was willing to go to ensure their plan succeeded. The poisoning attempt came on a Thursday afternoon in October, when Clara was 21 weeks pregnant. Veronica had called that morning, claiming she needed to stop by to drop off some work documents for Derek. Clara had been expecting this. She'd overheard Derek telling Veronica that Clara would be alone that afternoon. "Clara, darling," Veronica said when she arrived, her smile bright and artificial. "You look wonderful. Pregnancy really suits you." Veronica was 35, blonde, and viciously ambitious. She had the kind of polished beauty that came from expensive maintenance and designer clothes. But Clara could see the calculation behind her eyes. This was a woman who viewed other people as obstacles to be removed rather than humans to be considered. "Thank you," Clara replied, playing the role of the unsuspecting wife. "Derek's still at the office, but he should be home soon." "Actually, I was hoping we could chat," Veronica said, settling herself on Clara's couch with practiced ease. "Woman to woman. I feel like we barely know each other, and with the baby coming, I thought it would be nice if we could be friends." Clara's internal alarm bells were screaming, but she maintained her pleasant expression. "That's very thoughtful of you. Can I get you something to drink?" "Oh, don't trouble yourself," Veronica said quickly. "Actually, I brought something for you. A special herbal tea blend that's supposed to be wonderful for pregnant women. My sister swore by it when she was expecting." Veronica produced a thermos from her oversized purse, along with 2 delicate china cups that Clara recognized as coming from the set Derek's mother had given them for their wedding. The preparation was too elaborate, too thought out. No one brought their own cups for an impromptu visit. "How thoughtful," Clara said, accepting the cup with steady hands. The tea smelled of chamomile and honey, but underneath was something else, something bitter and medicinal that made Clara's stomach clench with fear. "It's a special blend," Veronica continued, watching Clara intently. "Chamomile for relaxation, ginger for nausea, and a few other herbs that are supposed to help with complications." The way she said complications made Clara's blood run cold. She lifted the cup to her lips, pretending to sip while keeping her mouth closed. The liquid touched her lips but didn't enter her mouth, a trick she'd learned during undercover work when she needed to appear to be drinking alcohol. Delicious," Clara said, setting the cup down carefully. "What else is in it?" "Oh, just natural herbs," Veronica said, her eyes glittering with anticipation. "Angelica root, blue cohosh, pennyroyal, all completely natural." Clara's blood turned to ice. Every one of those herbs was known to cause miscarriages in pregnant women. In the right combination, they could kill both mother and child. Veronica wasn't just trying to end Clara's pregnancy. She was trying to commit murder. "How much should I drink?" Clara asked, proud of how steady her voice sounded. "Oh, the whole cup," Veronica said eagerly. "And I brought enough for several more servings. You'll want to drink it regularly for the best effect." Clara nodded and lifted the cup again, this time letting a small amount touch her tongue before spitting it back. Even that tiny taste burned, confirming her worst fears about what Veronica had prepared. "Tell me about your sister's pregnancy," Clara said, needing to keep Veronica talking while she figured out how to handle this situation. "Did she have complications?" "Oh yes," Veronica said with false sympathy. "Terrible complications. She lost the baby at about 22 weeks. Tragic, really, but sometimes these things happen." Clara felt fury rise in her throat like bile. Veronica was describing infanticide with the casual tone of someone discussing the weather, actually seeming to enjoy the thought of Clara suffering the same tragic loss. "That must have been devastating," Clara managed. "It was," Veronica agreed, "but she recovered. Physically, anyway. Sometimes women just aren't meant to carry children to term. Their bodies reject the pregnancy as a way of protecting them from bringing an unhealthy child into the world." The pseudoscientific justification for murder made Clara want to scream, but she forced herself to nod sympathetically. "I never thought of it that way." "Oh, you should definitely consider it," Veronica said, leaning forward eagerly. "I mean, you're older than most first-time mothers. The risks increase significantly after 30. And with Derek's family history of genetic disorders." Derek had no family history of genetic disorders. Veronica was improvising now, building a narrative to justify what she was attempting to do. "What kind of genetic disorders?" Clara asked. "Oh, mental illness mostly," Veronica said airily. "Derek's mentioned that his father struggled with severe depression, and his grandmother was institutionalized for schizophrenia. Really, you'd be doing everyone a favor if you didn't pass those genes along." Clara had met Derek's father many times. He was a cheerful retired accountant who spent his weekends building birdhouses. Derek's grandmother had lived to 96 and had been sharp as a tack until the day she died. Veronica was spinning an elaborate fiction to make Clara feel like losing her baby would somehow be a mercy. "I should definitely finish this tea then," Clara said, lifting the cup again. "Oh yes," Veronica said, her eyes bright with malicious anticipation. "Every drop." Clara pretended to drink, then set the cup down with a satisfied sigh. "That was lovely. Should I drink the rest now, or save it for later?" "Now," Veronica said quickly. "The effects are cumulative. The more you drink, the better it works." Clara reached for the thermos, then paused as if struck by a sudden thought. "You know, I should probably check with my doctor first. He's been very specific about what I can and can't have during pregnancy." Veronica's face darkened slightly. "Oh, doctors are so overly cautious these days. This is completely natural. Indigenous women have been using these herbs for centuries." "Still," Clara said, "I'd feel better checking with Dr. Sterling first. He's been monitoring me very closely because of some concerns he has about the baby's development." That was a lie. Dr. Jonathan Sterling had told Clara just last week that her pregnancy was progressing perfectly, but Clara wanted to see how Veronica would react to the suggestion that someone might interfere with her plan. "What kind of concerns?" Veronica asked, and Clara could hear the worry in her voice. "Oh, just routine monitoring," Clara said vaguely. "But he likes me to check with him before trying any new supplements or teas." "You really don't need to bother him with something so minor," Veronica said, her mask of concern slipping slightly. "Doctors just overcomplicate things." "Maybe," Clara agreed. "But I'd hate for something to go wrong because I didn't follow his instructions." Veronica was clearly frustrated now, but she couldn't push too hard without revealing her true intentions. "Well," she said finally, "why don't you call him now? I'm sure he'll tell you it's fine." Clara felt a chill of realization. Veronica wanted her to call Dr. Sterling because she believed the herbs would work quickly. If Clara drank the full dose now and called the doctor in an hour, it would be too late to stop what was already in motion. The miscarriage would look natural, like a tragic complication that no one could have prevented. "You know what?" Clara said, standing up slowly. "I think I will call him right now." She walked to the kitchen, ostensibly to get her phone, but actually to trigger the silent alarm system Derek didn't know she'd had installed. Within minutes, the house would be surrounded by police officers who would arrive to find Veronica sitting next to a thermos full of poison and evidence of attempted murder. But as Clara reached for her phone, she heard Veronica's voice behind her, no longer sweet or sympathetic. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." Clara turned to find Veronica standing in the kitchen doorway, her expression cold and predatory. In her hand was a small pistol that looked like a toy but was undoubtedly real. "Sit down," Veronica ordered, "and finish your tea." "Veronica," Clara said carefully, "you don't want to do this." "Actually, I do," Veronica replied. "I've planned this very carefully. Derek thinks you're unstable and possibly suicidal. When the police find you, it will look like you poisoned yourself in a fit of postpartum psychosis. Derek will be devastated, of course, but he'll recover. With my help." Clara's mind raced through her options. The alarm was already triggered, but the police wouldn't arrive for at least 5 more minutes. The gun in Veronica's hand meant she couldn't run or fight. Her only hope was to keep Veronica talking long enough for help to arrive. "How long have you and Derek been planning this?" Clara asked. "Planning what?" Veronica said with false innocence. "The embezzlement. The fake custody case. The murder." Veronica's eyes widened slightly. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I know about the secret account," Clara said calmly. "I know about the apartment you rented in Phoenix under the name Vera Collins. I know about the forged medical records showing that I've been having psychological episodes. I know everything, Veronica." For the first time, Veronica looked genuinely shaken. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Clara reached slowly into her pocket and pulled out her phone, showing Veronica the recording app that had been running for the past 20 minutes. "I've been recording this entire conversation, including the part where you admitted to planning my murder." Veronica's face went white. "You're lying." "Oh yes, the whole cup," Clara quoted in Veronica's voice. "Every drop. The effects are cumulative. The more you drink, the better it works. Should I play it back for you?" The gun in Veronica's hand began to shake. Delete it. Delete it right now. I can't, Clara said. It's already been uploaded to a secure server. Even if you destroy my phone, copies exist in 3 different locations. That was a lie. Clara hadn't had time to upload anything, but Veronica didn't know that. You have no idea what you've done, Veronica snarled. Derek loves me. He's going to leave you anyway. I'm just making it easier for everyone. Derek doesn't love you, Clara said gently. He's using you the same way he used me. Once you've served your purpose, he'll discard you just like he planned to discard me. That's not true, isn't it? When was the last time he mentioned marriage? When was the last time he talked about your future together without mentioning my money or my life insurance policy? Clara could see uncertainty creeping into Veronica's eyes. The other woman had been so focused on eliminating Clara that she'd never stopped to consider whether Derek's feelings for her were genuine. He loves me, Veronica repeated, but her voice lacked conviction. He loves what you can do for him, Clara corrected. Just like he loved what I could do for him. But love? Real love? Derek isn't capable of that. The sound of sirens in the distance made both women freeze. Clara's alarm system had worked faster than expected. How? Veronica whispered. I told you, Clara said. I'm an investigative journalist. I know how to prepare for dangerous situations. The front door burst open and police officers flooded into the house, their weapons drawn. Veronica dropped her gun and raised her hands, but her face was a mask of defeated rage. Clara Montgomery, one of the officers called. In here, Clara replied. The suspect is armed but has surrendered. There's evidence of attempted poisoning on the coffee table in the living room. As the officers arrested Veronica, Clara finally allowed herself to feel the terror she'd been suppressing for the past hour. She sank into a kitchen chair, her hands shaking as the reality of what had almost happened hit her. Ma'am, are you injured? One of the paramedics asked. We were told there might be a poisoning. I didn't actually drink it, Clara said. But I need to go to the hospital to make sure the baby is okay. The ambulance ride to Mercy General was a blur of tests and monitoring. But Clara's main concern was ensuring that her unborn child hadn't been affected by the small amount of poison that had touched her lips. The doctors assured her that the baby's heartbeat was strong and that there was no indication of any complications. It was nearly midnight when Dr. Jonathan Sterling arrived to check on her personally. Clara had always been impressed by Dr. Sterling's professionalism and expertise, but seeing him rush into her hospital room at midnight, still wearing his formal clothes from what had obviously been a social event, made her see him in a new light. He was tall and elegant, with the kind of classical good looks that belonged on magazine covers rather than in hospital corridors. But more than his appearance, it was his genuine concern for her welfare that took Clara's breath away. Clara, thank God you're safe, he said, crossing the room in quick strides. When I got the call about the poisoning attempt, He stopped himself, seeming to realize that his emotional response might be inappropriate for a doctor-patient relationship. I came as soon as I could, he said more formally. How are you feeling? Scared, Clara admitted. Angry, grateful to be alive. Dr. Sterling pulled up a chair beside her bed, abandoning professional distance in favor of human compassion. What happened? The police told me someone tried to poison you, but they didn't have details. Clara told him everything. About discovering Derek's affair, about the planned embezzlement and custody battle, about Veronica's attempt to murder her with herbal tea. Dr. Sterling listened without interruption, his expression growing darker with every detail. My God, he said when she finished. Clara, you could have been killed. The herbs she used, in that combination, with your pregnancy, it would have been fatal within hours. I know, Clara said quietly. That's why I didn't actually drink it. How did you know? Most people wouldn't recognize those herbs or understand their effects. Clara smiled grimly. I did a story about black market abortion drugs 3 years ago. I researched every herb and chemical compound that could terminate a pregnancy. I recognized the smell immediately. Dr. Sterling stared at her with something that looked like awe. You saved your own life. And your baby's life. Do you realize how remarkable that is? I was just doing my job, Clara said. Being suspicious is what I do for a living. What you do for a living is expose the truth, Dr. Sterling corrected. What you did tonight was survive an attempted murder through quick thinking and courage. There's a difference. Clara felt tears starting to form. The adrenaline was wearing off, and the full emotional impact of the evening was beginning to hit her. "I don't know what happens now," she said. "My husband was planning to have me committed so he could steal my money and run away with his mistress. My marriage is over. My baby's father is a criminal. I don't even know where I'm going to live." Dr. Sterling was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Clara, I need to tell you something. Something I should have said months ago." Clara looked up at him, surprised by the sudden change in his tone. "I've been your doctor for 6 months," he continued, "and in that time, I've come to admire not just your strength and intelligence, but your kindness, your integrity, your grace under pressure. What I'm about to say is completely inappropriate, and if you're uncomfortable, we can pretend I never said it." Clara's heart began to race. "I've fallen in love with you," Dr. Sterling said simply. "I know the timing is terrible. I know you're married and pregnant and dealing with more than anyone should have to handle. But after tonight, after seeing how close I came to losing you, I can't keep pretending my feelings are purely professional." Clara stared at him in shock. "Jonathan, I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "I just needed you to know that you're not alone. Whatever you decide to do, wherever you decide to go, you have someone who cares about you. Someone who sees your worth and would consider it a privilege to be part of your life." Clara felt something crack open in her chest. Not pain this time, but something like hope. Here was a man who had seen her at her worst and her best, who knew her strength and her vulnerability, who was offering not just love, but partnership. "You don't know me," she said softly. "Not really. You've seen me as a patient, but you don't know who I am when I'm not pregnant and afraid. I know you're brave enough to investigate your own husband when you suspect betrayal," Jonathan said. "I know you're smart enough to recognize poison and clever enough to avoid drinking it. I know you're strong enough to face down an armed woman while protecting your unborn child. I know you're kind enough to thank the paramedics and police officers even while you're in shock." He leaned forward slightly. "Clara, I've been a doctor for 15 years. I've seen people in crisis, and I've seen how they respond when everything falls apart. Some people crumble. Some people lash out. Some people give up. But you investigate. You plan. You survive. And you do it all while maintaining your dignity and your compassion." Clara felt tears flowing freely now. "Jonathan, I'm 5 months pregnant with another man's child. My life is a disaster. I'm going to be divorced and single and probably dealing with legal battles for months. Why would you want any part of that?" Jonathan smiled, and it was the most beautiful expression Clara had ever seen. "Because you're extraordinary. Because you deserve to be loved by someone who sees your worth. Because that baby you're carrying deserves to have a father who will love them unconditionally, regardless of biology. You don't even know if it's a boy or a girl," Clara said through her tears. "It doesn't matter," Jonathan replied. "If you'll let me, I'll love that child like my own. I'll love you both like you're the most precious things in my world." Clara looked at this man who was offering her everything Derek had promised but never delivered: respect, partnership, unconditional love. Jonathan Sterling was a successful pediatric surgeon who ran his own practice and donated his time to free clinics. He was wealthy in his own right, but more importantly, he was good in a way that reminded Clara why she'd wanted to believe in love in the first place. "What are you asking me?" Clara said finally. "I'm asking if you'll give me a chance," Jonathan said. "Not now. You need time to heal, time to process everything that's happened. But when you're ready, when you've had time to think, I'm asking if you'll consider letting me court you properly, like you should have been courted from the beginning." Clara felt a smile breaking through her tears. "Court me? Old-fashioned, I know," Jonathan said with a self-deprecating laugh. "But I'm an old-fashioned man who believes in doing things right. I want to take you to dinner and bring you flowers and meet your friends and learn everything about you that isn't related to your pregnancy or your blood pressure. And if I say yes," Clara asked, "then I'll spend every day trying to prove that I'm worthy of your trust," Jonathan said. "And when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'll ask you to marry me and let me be the father your child deserves." Clara reached out and took his hand. "I'd like that," she said softly. "I'd like that very much." The next morning brought a parade of detectives, lawyers, and federal agents as the full scope of Derek and Veronica's crimes came to light. The poisoning attempt was just the beginning. Investigators found evidence of mail fraud, embezzlement, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit murder. Derek was arrested at his office, dragged away in handcuffs while his colleagues watched in shock. The secret account contained nearly $200,000 stolen from Clara's inheritance and book advance, money that would be returned, but that represented months of careful planning and systematic theft. Veronica was charged with attempted murder in the first degree, conspiracy to commit fraud, and a dozen lesser charges that would likely keep her in prison for the next 20 years. Her plan to start fresh in Phoenix died in a holding cell while she waited for a public defender who couldn't possibly mount an adequate defense against the mountain of evidence Clara had assembled. Clara's story became national news within days. Investigative journalist exposes husband's murder plot ran on the front page of newspapers across the country. The combination of betrayal, attempted murder, and Clara's brilliant investigation captured the public imagination and made her a symbol of female empowerment and survival. But the most beautiful part of Clara's story was still being written. Jonathan kept his promise to court her properly. Even while Clara was dealing with divorce proceedings and criminal trials, he brought her flowers every week, took her to museums and concerts, and spent hours talking with her about books and travel and dreams for the future. He was there when Clara's daughter was born, a healthy, beautiful girl she named Grace. Jonathan held Clara's hand through the labor and cried when he first held the baby who would become his daughter in every way that mattered. Derek, watching from prison, had signed away his parental rights in exchange for a reduced sentence, wanting nothing to do with the child who represented his failure and downfall. Clara and Jonathan were married when Grace was 6 months old, in a small ceremony surrounded by friends and family who had supported Clara through the darkest period of her life. Jonathan legally adopted Grace before her first birthday, giving her his name and his unconditional love. Clara's book about her experience, The Poison Tea: How I Survived My Husband's Murder Plot, became a bestseller and was optioned for a television movie. She used the proceeds to establish a foundation helping women escape abusive relationships and domestic violence situations. Derek served 3 years in federal prison for fraud and conspiracy. When he was released, he found that his reputation was destroyed, his professional licenses had been revoked, and no company would hire him. He eventually found work as a night shift security guard, a spectacular fall from the pharmaceutical executive he'd once been. Veronica served 8 years for attempted murder before being released on parole. She emerged from prison to find that the world had moved on without her. Her beauty had faded, her connections were gone, and the comfortable life she tried to steal from Clara was no longer within reach. 5 years after that terrible night when Veronica had tried to poison her, Clara stood in the kitchen of her beautiful home, watching through the window as Jonathan taught 4-year-old Grace to ride a bicycle in their garden. Clara was pregnant again, this time with twins conceived in love and wanted by both parents. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was Derek, writing from some internet cafe or public library, his latest attempt to make contact. Clara, the message read, I know I have no right to ask, but I'm struggling. I can't find decent work, I can't afford a real apartment, and I'm alone. I've learned my lesson. I understand now what I lost when I betrayed you. Could you find it in your heart to forgive me? Could you help me get back on my feet? I'm still Grace's biological father. She deserves to know me. Please, just give me one chance to prove I've changed. Clara read the message twice, then deleted it without responding. She turned off her phone and went outside to join her husband and daughter in the garden, where Grace was taking her first wobbling bicycle ride toward her mother's outstretched arms. Derek Montgomery had made his choice that Thursday afternoon when he chose to stand by while his mistress tried to murder his pregnant wife. Clara Sterling had made hers too, and she chose love, dignity, and a future built on truth rather than the ruins of the past. Some crimes are so heinous that forgiveness becomes irrelevant. Some betrayals are so complete that the only appropriate response is to build a life so beautiful that the past becomes a distant nightmare you barely remember. Clara had learned that attempting to poison a journalist came with consequences that lasted a lifetime. But she had also learned that surviving such an attempt came with rewards beyond anything she could have imagined. True love, real partnership, and the kind of happiness she'd always deserved but had never dared to believe she could find. Derek's story ended with isolation, poverty, and the knowledge that he'd destroyed his own life through greed and cruelty. Veronica's story ended with prison and the realization that her beauty and manipulation could only take her so far. But Clara's story? Clara's story was just beginning, and it was magnificent. She had chosen her ending, and it was filled with love, laughter, and the sweet sound of her daughter calling Daddy to the man who had chosen to love them both unconditionally. And in a few months, when the twins were born, Jonathan would be there again, holding her hand and crying tears of joy as their family grew even more beautiful. Some fairy tales, Clara had learned, were worth surviving a nightmare to find.